I'm Susan Saylor, and today I'm interviewing Sue Van Dorn. And Sue, it is such a pleasure to see you.
Thank you.
My first question is, how did you discover Pathwork? And since you brought Pathwork to Pittsburgh, that's going to be kind of involved, but how did you discover Pathwork?
Right. I'm so glad you're asking this question because I think it teaches us a lot. I first found out about Pathwork. I was at a conference in Washington, D.C., and there were many agencies and programs had a table or an exhibit. So on our break, of course, we would go peruse the material. So Pathwork from Seven Oaks had a table and had Susan Thensingas's book, The Undefended Self. And I picked that up and I started looking. I thought, oh my God, this is really cool. I'd like to find out about this program. Forgot about it. That's a shout out to the Connections Committee, how important it is to put material in the world. I mean, it is a way of letting people know about us. A few weeks later, a friend of mine who was in an energy training program brought me that book, of all things, from Susan Thensingas, and they were using it as their curriculum. So I thought, now this is definitely a sign. So I started going to workshops down at Seven Oaks. So that's the way I initially got started. The way, I think this is probably more important, the way I really deepened my work with Pathwork. My colleagues and I did the 5-year transformation program. And then I figured I was done. And I hit a situation in my life. It was one of great trauma. I think the most I would say about it is that I came face to face with some of the darkest evil in the world through a client of mine. And I became so clear that my need for spiritual support was essential. Like, this was bigger than I could handle on my own. So I went back to Philadelphia and did the teacher training and the helpership training. Not that I wanted to be a Pathwork teacher or helper. I just wanted to deepen my training. I did become a teacher and helper, as you know, of course, that's history. So I think that second point is when we feel the limitation of our own human situation and know that we need answers greater than the self, we need answers from the great not me, as someone would say, the divine, the all. We start to feel a need for spiritual sustenance and help and guidance and support. So that's what got me deeply involved the next time. And out of that, I accidentally ended up founding a region. It was not my intention, but Spirit had other things in mind. So, yeah.
And over what period of time are we talking about from that meeting in Washington, D.C.?
That would have been in the mid 80s. Yeah. And we did workshops in Seven Oaks, the early 90s. Yeah.
I don't really know what Seven Oaks is.
It was one of, if not the first Pathwork centers in the world that got created after the original Pathwork Center in Phoenicia, New York. It was the first kind of satellite. It was, yeah.
Was it located in Pittsburgh?
No, it was in Charlottesville, Virginia. Yeah. Yeah, so we would drive 6 hours down and 6 hours back, 1 weekend a month. Yeah.
You don't mind driving?
No, didn't mind driving, not at all.
So what drew you to Pathwork was this combination of psychological need and spiritual connection to cope with it.
Spirit needing spiritual help. And I would say that, you didn't ask me this, but I will add it. I had always been, since my late 20s, early 30s, I'm now 84, on a spiritual path. And I had always been on a psychological path. My career was as a social worker, clinician, psychotherapist. And when I discovered Pathwork, I thought this is a program that brings the two together, the spiritual and the psychological. And that was so wonderful for me. It's like,
And what a powerful
Isn't it?
combination it is.
yes, yes. And I've never, and I've done a lot of training and I have a lot of programs, but I've never been engaged in a program that so deeply does the psychological and so deeply does the spiritual. And I so appreciate that about Pathwork. Yeah,
Well, I certainly agree.
yeah.
How would you say Pathwork has affected how you live your life?
Well, I think through that training, I have brought my life in the world on the earth plane, concrete life, down to size. It used to be the be all, end all. That's where all the orienting lived. That's where all of the accomplishing lived. That's where all the failures lived. And really have come to see that the world of our ego, our personality, and our collective ego is not unimportant. It's just not what's most important. So what's most important is learning to live from my spirit and the spirit in other people, love and faithfulness and justice and wisdom and truth and empowerment. Those are the orienting principles of the divine. And that's how I orient now. And my relationship with, concrete reality is secondary. Does that make sense at all?
Oh, yes, it does.
Oh, good.
Yes, it
Okay.
does.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. This is just extraneous, but I feel impelled to say it. I feel that I am here on earth to love and be loved. And I feel an enormous love for people. I really think of people as my brothers and my sisters. So
Right, and I feel that enormous love, Susan, which is a wonderful thing. You are living from spirit. You are not living from your ego, your personality. The ego, the personality cannot love. It's not made to be able, it can do a lot of things it can't love. It's very self-involved and self-centered. So when you are in love and present to love, you're living a life in the spirit. Yeah.
it feels like that.
Yes.
But to get back to the official questions.
Yeah.
What is challenging about Pathwork for you? And maybe it is no longer challenging, but
No,
when
it still is. It's always been that the lectures teach us that living without defense, living without mask, living without the persona, and being willing to expose ourselves as we really are, and all of our brokenness and selfishness and pettiness, and is the way to spirit, the way to light, the way to the divine. And that's a tall order, to be willing to have the courage and the humility to constantly expose myself. No, that was wrong. I apologize for that. I was in error. Oh, that's a piece of my self-centeredness, my neck, to live that way ongoingly, moment by, it's never easy. And I believe in it, but it's very, very hard. It calls you to be a spiritual warrior,
I love that phrase.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's never gotten easier for me. It's still hard. I mean, I think the only thing that makes it easier is how much more I believe in it and value it. I did it early on because they told me it was important. I do it now because I know the importance. I see the outcome in my life of living that way. I'm living without defense. So there's no wall between me and you, and no wall between me and life when I live undefended in that way. And it's hard. It's hard.
Yes. Could you say something about when you had that wall going? How you removed it from your life, made it inactive. I
Uh-huh.
understand the wall never completely disappears, but we can make it more or less powerful in our lives.
Self-honesty about our negativity, self-honesty about the wall, admitting it and what it's made up of. For me, my main ray is wisdom. I'm a reason type, and so my main defense is to withdraw, to protect myself. That's my false defense, my false choice. If I am to remove that wall, first of all, I have to see that I do that. I have to admit it. I have to own it and take responsibility for it. And I have to dare to hang in there rather than withdraw. That's how that wall comes down.
That's very, very helpful. Thanks.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is there something we haven't talked about that you would really like to add?
You had asked me the question, how has Pathwork changed my life? And I think I do want to speak to that. Because the guide teaches that as long as we stay simply fascinated with these principles, we delight in them, but we don't apply them to how we live our lives. They're useless. They're just like reading a good book. So I have learned to apply these principles, and the way I do that is that I sit with myself every morning for an hour or two, some evenings, and face myself, my day yesterday. Where was I negative? Where did I get hurt? Where was I in error? I feel the pain of it. I own it. I take responsibility for it. I grieve it. I feel my rage about it. And then I ask God for help, and I get up and I dust myself off and I go have a marvelous day. So like right now, we're dealing with a lot of painful things in the world, politically and in Israel and Palestine. I have to sit and face that pain every day and go through it, feel my feelings about it, see where I might be being negative, like this should not be. It is, it's where we are in our evolution. And to ask God to then help me bear it and hold it, then I don't spend my day suffering. So I do that about world events. I do that about my own petty feelings of inadequacy or fear or pride. I do it on a large scale and a small scale. That's how I live. And that is applying the Pathwork principles to how I live my life. That's how I'm different.
Oh my goodness. How deeply impressive that you really live these
I do.
principles
And so grateful.
consciously.
Yes, yes. And so grateful every day that there's a path. We don't have to linger in our suffering. There's suffering. We have to go through it, but we don't have to linger there. We can go through it every day and get to freedom and peace and love and connection again and again and again. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sue, for this interview.
Thank you
It's been
so
a deep
much
pleasure.
for inviting me. Yes.
Well, I will say goodbye.
All right. Bye-bye. Thank you, Susan.